And welcome back to the show. Well, there is a brand new action/crime thriller that we know that you are going to love. It is called Jericho Ridge, and today we thought we would actually get the writer-director of this brilliant film that is out now on streaming platforms to chat a little bit about this new film. So welcome to the program, Will.
Thanks so much for having me. It's very exciting to be here. Cheers.
Now, Will, tell us a little bit about Jericho Ridge. Where did the idea for the film first come about for you?
Well, it's a sort of, as a sort of action thrillers go, it's quite contained. It's mostly set in one location, which is like a rural sheriff's office in America. I think, as a sort of first time, it's my first film I've written and directed on my own, my first feature. And I was just looking for an idea that I could contain a bit and sort of initially started writing a script about someone just manning a dispatch radio. And that's sort of where it began. And then it sort of, it started to become a bit more action-packed as I got into it. And that's basically the sort of genesis of the idea, really. It was just, it was a woman, manning a dispatch radio over a sort of night of crazy things going on.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what that journey was like for you. This is, as you said, this is the first time that you've written and directed a feature. What was that process like, sitting down to work on a film as a screenplay that you knew that you would end up directing?
Well, I mean, I was trying to get another script of mine made before this, but this sort of seemed to be the first one where people just wanted to make it, and I guess we sort of managed to source some finance quite early on. Not a lot, obviously. And we were sort of trucking along. We were going to go and shoot this film in Canada. I guess the biggest sort of challenge of anything like this, the writing process was fairly. I think I finished writing the first draft in 2017, so it's been going on a long time, And I think the sort of biggest thing that messed with us, as it did for pretty much everyone else on this planet, was COVID.
Yep.
We were supposed to start pre-production March 2020. We location scouted Winnipeg in Canada in sort of November 2019. And then, I'm sure we're all doing, you start looking at the news going, hang on a sec, what is coming down the pipeline here? And, of course, then it was trying to explore where's going to open up first? Where can we actually go and shoot this film? And so we looked at all these, mad places around the world. And then eventually we settled on Kosovo, because one of our producers has been working there for 11 or 12 years. And obviously it's in its total infancy in terms of the sort of the film industry out there, but it seems to be expanding rapidly. So that's where we went in the end.
We're seeing here in Australia at the moment a lot of films that were filmed during COVID coming out, and they're filmed in countries like Slovakia and Slovenia. How does that change how you approach shooting the film? Of course, like you said, you were planning to film in Canada. You ended up in Kosovo.
Yes.
How does that change then when you're about to start filming and getting ready to film?
Well, I mean, sort of aesthetically, obviously, you've got to, be very concerned about actors and accents and stuff like that, especially if you've got people playing Americans who aren't. But really, looking at it, Kosovo, just in terms of the actual terrain, the film sort of starts off at our lead character, Tabby Temple, played by Nikki Amuka Bird. It sort of starts off at her house, and then we travel from there to the sheriff's office, where the majority of the rest of the film takes place. And so we only had to sort of fool people with these sort of landscapes for 2 or 3 minutes, really, until we actually just land at the sheriff's office. And it was actually rather beautiful, Kosovo, because Kosovo's got mountains, it's got hills, it's got lakes, it's got all this stuff. Whereas Winnipeg there's not even a molehill. It's the flattest place I've ever been in my life. So I think just in terms of actual visual splendor, for want of a better word, I think Kosovo worked out really well for us.
Now, going back to the writing process, you said originally it started off as somebody sitting by the dispatch radio. Tell us about that journey. Tell us about how you got to the changes to where the film ended up being when you started to shoot.
It just felt, well, there's a really good Danish film called The Guilty, which is almost that exact thing. It's someone in an emergency, and it's like an emergency sort of radio responder just talking someone through this mad night. And I think they remade it with Jake Gyllenhaal. So that can absolutely be done, but I just found as soon as I started writing it, I wanted to see what was on the other end of these calls. You know what I mean? I actually sort of wanted a way to see what was happening and to bring the action into. Initially, it was sort of very external. There's lots of stuff that was happening outside the sheriff's office and it was beyond my lead character's control. And then it was about bringing almost, bringing all the problems, bringing the fight to her and seeing how she coped. Yeah.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the development of that character as well, because of course when you watch this film, Tabby is such an amazing character. Tell us about that development and how you brought in the character of Monty as well into the screenplay in the start.
Yeah, that's it. That's a really interesting question because I was looking at through my initial draft, and you don't meet Monty, who plays the lead character's son, wayward teenage son. They've got a bad relationship. He didn't sort of come in until page 35. But then as you're sort of writing a first draft, you're missing out, all the subtleties. You're just trying to figure out roughly what the story is. And then you go back and you suddenly realize that the real engine of this film is that emotional relationship between mother and son. That, we start the film off and, they're at loggerheads. They're at each other's throats. This is for want of a better word, a fairly toxic mother and son relationship. Trust's gone. And then we put these people through this insane night of violence and craziness and tension and terror and action, and it's like, how does that affect this relationship? How does that affect mother and son? Where do they go from there? And I guess that was the sort of, that's what sort of came in with multiple rewrites. The character of Earl McCready, played by Michael Socker, wasn't in the first draft, and that was just, looking for someone, just another character to mix it up when we're in this one location. I think it really worked that.
Definitely. So then when you get to casting, tell us a little bit about casting. You've got this great heroic character in Tabby. How do you then go about finding the right person to fill that role?
It was just, it was a very long process. We were trying to get the film financed a number of different ways, sort of at a higher budget level. And at some point we just said to each other, look, we've got some money, we can go and shoot this, we can get it in the can. Let's go to the best actor we can possibly get with the sort of money and the sort of the scale of our project. Let's go and see who it is. And when we sort of wrote up a list, and Nikki Amuka-Bird, who is a superb actor, she was pretty much number one on that list. And very lucky to get it. And I feel sort of someone of her caliber coming on board really just elevates it. It just really lifts it. She's so. But it's serious, but in the wrong way. But she's such a serious actor. She comes at it with, so much experience, so much intelligence, so much empathy, and she really does bring something. And she just sort of lifts, a rising tide lifts all boats, and I really do felt. But then I think everyone was good. I think we got lucky. We got some really good people, some sort of established talent, and some really good up and comers. And I guess because we were shooting in Kosovo, a lot of the cast are British as opposed to American, so they're all doing the accents, but I think they did pretty damn well, really, in regards to that. Yeah,
and Nikki's done such amazing films, but she's also done a wide variety of genres as well. When you look back over her career, from horror right through to kind of more crime thrillers, sci-fi. Did you have to work with her a lot?
As well, she's done.
Yeah, did you have to work with her a lot to get her into this role?
No, we did. I guess sort of with her, it was wanting to understand the realities of being a sheriff's deputy, and it was sort of things like working with working with equipment, working with guns, stuff like that, just so you have the confidence that just so you don't look like you're doing things for the first time as you're doing them on the screen. If you pull your gun out, it doesn't look like the first time you've ever held one, especially if you had the job for 10, 15 years. But other than that, the sort of the emotional. She comes with that. We sat down, we read the script a few times, and we figured it all out. And she came very, very prepared. As did her and Zach. They did a lot of sort of background work on their relationship as mother and son. That all this sort of stuff, not necessarily in the film, but it informs their choices they make as performers. So it's worth doing.
So at what point of the process did Nikki come on board, and then did you find that you had to cast around her from that point?
Yes, because it's such a the lead character is the only POV character in the film. It's the only character that drives scenes. So we can never. But this is sort of task I set myself early on. We can never sort of bounce outside and find out what the bad guys are doing, because she's got to be. So it was we had to cast that role first, really.
Yep.
Which we did, yes, and then we built up everyone else around it. But I think like I said, I think we got really lucky. There's I think sort of English people doing American accents is probably a bit safer than doing it the other way around. because most English actors, if you want to work regularly and you want to work on big things, you have to be able to do an American accent. That's where so much of the work is. So yeah.
Yeah, so having Tabby as the only, as you said, point of view character, that's pretty interesting because, of course, one of the things I've noticed in Hollywood recently is they love to have a kind of known actor playing the villain as well. And I guess I say this because last night I saw the new Bad Boys movie, and it would literally go from one scene of Will Smith and Martin Lawrence planning, and then it would cut to the villains planning what they're going to do next as well. And I've noticed that happens a lot in Hollywood these days. So was that a decision that you made very early on, and why did you make that decision that you would only see it from her point of view?
I don't know. Sometimes, sorry. Yes, I made that was one of the first decisions I made. I'm not entirely sure why I made it. It just felt right when I did it, and I think that was sort of like trying to cast Philip Christopher, who plays one of the bad guys in the film. You want to he's done a lot of great work, but I wouldn't say he's like a household name. So you can sort of meet him in the film and forget about him, and then he comes back in, and you get that sort of it's like a process of discovery, which you don't have like with an actor or a name actor you recognise, because as soon as you see them, you'd be like, oh, okay, well they've got to be they've got to be the bad guy or something. So it was quite fun doing it that way around, I think.
So a lot of the young filmmakers that listen to this show are probably wondering about this question. How did you find the process then when you were working on set? How did you find that process of directing a screenplay that you had written? Did you find that different at all?
No, I sort of enjoy. Just sort of working with the stuff I've written, because I guess if you've written it, if you generated the material, you're sort of so across it that I think there's a unique understanding of it. Hopefully.
Yep.
So I really enjoyed that. One of the hardest things I found on set as a director, just in terms of making me look foolish, was we didn't have there's a lot of off-camera lines in this. Obviously, there's a lot of the times people are talking on the radio, they're talking on phones, they're talking down to sort of 5G live stream dash cams from the police cars. So there's a lot of off-screen dialogue that needs to happen, and I basically was the mug / sucker on set who had to do all that. So it's a big compliment to Nikki's acting that she would do. We sort of do 8-page passes, and I'd be playing like 3 or 4 characters doing some of the ropiest American accents that have probably ever been heard. And she's able to obviously do her acting, ignore my terrible performance, and imbue everything with the appropriate amount of emotion and tension. So that's a plus point to her. But that was quite difficult to do that and focus on the performances you're getting out of the characters and the camera shot. There's just quite a lot of juggling, isn't there, on set, I guess.
Yeah. Talking of that, this is one of those movies where it's got a lot of memorable scenes in it where you walk away from the film remembering certain things. Did you have a favourite scene when you were filming?
What was the most fun to film? I think it's probably sort of the stuff. What was the most fun to film? A lot of the stuff obviously outside was really fun to film, but it was always incredibly cold. Sort of the end of the film with the big confrontation when it all finally kicks off. That was a lot of fun. It just looked great with the sort of when you're actually on set, and then the snow is just sort of reflecting light. There was just a really cool vibe to it. But it was sort of minus 12 degrees Celsius, so, swings and roundabouts. It was very cool, but it was absolutely brutal.
Yeah. Now, we ask a lot of directors that film on water, what was the most challenging part of filming in their environment? What was the most challenging part for you filming in minus 12 degrees?
Well, the fact that sort of driving to set, that there was a blizzard, and I was like, well, we've got to have 3 or 4 days of matching weather in a row now, nights of matching weather, and they're not going to match. And then the next week, all the snow melted. So, you're trying to, and then, so that sort of means you have to start in VFX and post-production doing snow paint shots, which are, I would say, totally seamless, but is obviously like a budget consideration now.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing, all your sort of hard-earned plans and things like that are just so at the mercy of the elements. And, there was one time we lost an hour or two on set, and we turned up on set, and the guy who's supposed to be getting the camera from the rental company accidentally snapped the key off in the door of the sort of room they keep all the equipment locked in.
Yep.
And so we're sort of on set, burning, everyone's getting stressed out, burning time. And then meanwhile, some people across town in Pristina trying to break down a door to get our camera. That sort of mad stuff like that happens. Just it's so challenging and always keeps you. I guess it keeps you on your toes. You have to keep coming up with sort of creative problems, creative solutions to very seemingly random and crazy problems that are thrown at you every day, basically.
Yeah. Now, Will, I know we are running out of time very quickly, so I've got 2 quick questions to finish off. First of all, what's your next project? What are you working on now that Jericho Ridge is out and for everybody to see?
I'm working on an action film, a sort of buddy action movie set in Mexico. Very outrageous, very raucous, bit bigger, a lot of fun. More comedic, but lots of bigger action set pieces, stuff like that. And then I'm about halfway through writing a horror, which I would say is the first horror I've ever started writing, and I'm really enjoying it. Didn't think I'd be enjoying it this much, actually. I'm loving it. So I'm hoping either one of those two will have half a chance in the next couple of years getting into production. That'd be the ideal.
Awesome. And to finish off, what would you like to say to people out there who are about to sit down and watch Jericho Ridge?
But have a great time. I think you genuinely will. I've watched this. I've been to enough film festivals and watched this with enough audiences to know that this is a good time in the movies. It's short, it's punchy, it's well acted, it's emotional, it's very tense, and it's action packed. And we're a small film, so we don't have the sort of marketing or publicity budget that anyone else does. So if you do see it and you do enjoy it, please just give us a shout on one of the socials. And give us a mention, because it all helps. It really does. As many eyeballs as possible would be great for us.